Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Wealth Edit Wednesday. We are really excited about our guests this week. We have Leslie Simon, who has just an incredible story of, well, I always say this, it's like, it's so fun when you meet somebody that has a job that like you don't know much about, and you get to hear their story. And not only is it something new that we haven't heard about on Wealth Edit yet, but also it's really interesting. So Leslie has the pleasure of being the general manager for Pearl Records and Gwendolyn Records, which so that is with Garth Brooks and Trisha Yearwood, right?
Yep.
And not only that, in her spare time, she gets to renovate beautiful homes down at the beach. So for me, that just sounds like the perfect mix. I'm just so excited to hear more about it. But I actually have known Leslie for a really long time. She grew up in Montgomery with me. So I'll let you take the stage and tell us more about you, and maybe just start off like with, where you grew up, where you went to college, and how you ended up in the music industry.
Okay. Thank you so much, Emily, for having me, and Lauren. I love what you guys are doing. And I was actually introduced to y'all about a year ago when Jenny Ryan did she did a Wednesday women's series and Instagram Live with her company Blue Root. And I saw Lauren and was like, wow, this is really cool what these women are doing. And then I was on it afterwards. And so anyway, we made the reconnection at that point. And it's awesome to see how you guys are building your business and also helping women from the financial perspective and an entrepreneurial perspective as well. So, like you said, we grew up together in Montgomery, Alabama, many years ago, and I went to the University of Alabama. I actually didn't even consider anywhere else. I was so hell bent on Roll Tide. I just followed my parents and went straight there. When I graduated, I took a year off to be a live-in nanny for a race car driver, and it introduced me to a world that was so different than what I knew in Montgomery. I mean, I had a very conservative upbringing, and really didn't know that you could go out and live in the sports entertainment world. So I was introduced to it then and ended up in Nashville. I got into the record business, the music business, literally as a temp. I mean, my very first job was as a temp, an assistant to the head of sales at RCA. And over the years, I just worked really hard, and I had a passion for the industry. I had a passion for music. Even though I didn't grow up on country, I just loved music in general. And I worked my way up over the years. I ended up as the head of promotion for Arista Records, which is a division of Sony, and then left there in 2016. And it was right about the same time that Garth was launching. He already had an imprint, but he was going to staff it as opposed to doing deals with other major labels. So when he has an imprint, that means he owns his own masters, and all the music that he sells, he owns those masters. So when he decided to do that, he brought me in as his general manager, and we hired a promotion team to market the recorded music out to the fans. And so that is how I ended up there.
That's so interesting. And you know what I love about that story? And it's, when after you finished nannying, you just went into Nashville. Did you just want to live in Nashville? Or was that just you got a taste of the entertainment industry and thought?
My mother grew up in Nashville. So I spent my whole life visiting Nashville. I always loved it. When I was a little girl, I was like, I want to live here one day. When I worked for the race car driver, we were based out of Columbus, Ohio, and that was my first time to really leave the South. So I had these visions of going to a big city, but at the same time, I was a little intimidated by a big city, which is hysterical now because I've traveled the world by myself and can pretty much see a picture of an airport and tell you which one it is.
Yeah.
But then I was a little nervous, and I kind of wanted to step out a little bit and spread my wings, but I didn't want to spread them so far that it was a little too scary. So Nashville was just the perfect place, and I still was surrounded by family. And my sweet uncle actually helped me get my first job at the temp agency. I was a marketing person for the temp agency, and they ended
You
up.
actually worked for the temp agency.
I worked for the temp agency,
Okay.
and then I went to the owner, who is my uncle's dear friend, and I said, I'm so grateful for this opportunity, but I really want to work in the music business. Would you consider placing me as a temp at RCA? Because they were a client. And he was like, I mean, I was young. It was my, my first job out of school. And he was like, sure. And so he really helped launch my career because I didn't know anybody in the industry. And I have learned 20, 30 years later that this industry, it's a lot easier if you know people. If you don't know anybody and don't have any way in, I mean, I look back and I'm like, wow, those, those connections were really meant to be for me to get in that way, because I didn't have another way to get in.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it sounds like, and I know we talked about this yesterday in our pre-call for a while, but it seems like you were just a natural negotiator, for lack of a better word, because to be young, relatively new out of college, to go and like approach your boss and like advocate for yourself and say, I want this. I think that is something that a lot of us lack even in our 40s, just that.
Well, I think my parents would tell you I started negotiating when I came out of the womb. I mean, I always wanted to debate them and explain to them why I should be able to do the things I wanted to do, and was certainly started to hone those skills in high school, in different activities I did. But yeah, I mean, when I started, I was really naive. I was naive to the industry. I was naive to negotiating. I was naive to the balance of, we talked a little bit about this yesterday, the balance of using your internal organic skill set and being able to get things done. At first, I mean, it's a very male oriented, driven old boys club industry, especially, 30 years ago. And so when I started, I was so used to how the men that were executives that I saw, I mean, now my mentor is one of the just most gracious and gentle, and I mean, tough as nails, but also just really knows how to nurture people. But other than him, it was pretty tough. I mean, and so I picked up a lot of what I saw men doing that was successful, that really wasn't successful for me. And it took experience and time and maturity to realize that, you know what, if I was a little more gentle and tender and used, some of my Southern graces, I was actually better than, I mean, I can call somebody out and debate them, my point, till the cows come home, but does that get it done? I mean, that's not what negotiating is about. It's not about being right. It's about finding a common ground where everybody feels really good about what they're doing. And both sides are going to have to give a little. And sometimes negotiations are tougher. Sometimes, there are things that I say, we're just not going to do that. And, it's okay if that doesn't work for you, but we're not going to go to that point. So if you want to do this with us, you're going to have to give a little bit more. And we'll get there, but you have to be able to know the balance of when to be softer, when to be, hold your ground, but also doing it with integrity and doing it with grace, and really looking out for the best interest of your client, but also keeping your relationship solid. Because at the end of the day, while a deal may or may not work, I'm going to have to work with those people on the other end of that deal when the next one comes along. Mm-hmm. So how do I walk away from that? How do they walk away feeling about me? I want it to always be positive, and not that that means you have to, care what everybody thinks about you all the time. That's a different statement, but you do want people to walk away and feel good about the interaction that they had, mm-hmm. and your integrity above all.
And I love that, because, as we talk about negotiating for ourselves as women all the time on the Wealth Edit, and sometimes it has such a negative connotation, like that we're going to go in there and just like, all rules of civility out the window. And here we are, just like, and it doesn't have to be that way. And I love that, because sometimes the more gentler side of women is our superpower.
100%. And I mean, being a bull in a china shop doesn't usually win people over. You know, you always get a lot more bees with honey.
That's right. All right. And another thing about this is too, is, and I think you touched on this a little bit, but when we're negotiating for ourselves, it's also really important to understand what we're negotiating for, what we're willing to give on on the front end. You know,
Right.
when you really have a real understanding of your product, so in your case, Garth or Trisha, like, you know them well enough to know
Right.
like what the, like, we're not going to do that line is. And then, you know, and so I think sometimes too, like, spending time on the front end, that we like really take time to figure out what our non-negotiables are.
Right.
Because if you know that, then it's so much easier to become creative, and then also to be able to just like say a firm no and walk away.
Right. Right. I think preparation is incredibly important in any industry. But you have to know what you're talking about, and you have to also be able to say, if you don't know, let me look into that and get back to you. You don't have to have all the answers at once. It's way better to walk away and come up with the right answer than throwing something out that's not correct.
Right.
And I've learned that in all of my different businesses. You know, it's also really important to, sometimes things do change in the midst of a negotiation. And so if you have to take a beat and step away and look at a different perspective and decide if that perspective is workable, is doable, I mean, then take that beat. There's nothing wrong with saying, you know what, I need a few hours on this. I need a minute. I mean, you can even just sometimes getting a good night's sleep, you wake up with a completely different perspective the next day. And you can look at things. I mean, I'll wake up in the middle of the night and I'll have a thought of something that changes what I was negotiating. I mean, on a real estate contract, I had that literally 2 nights ago. We could not get to a number. And in the middle of the night, I woke up and I was like, oh my gosh, if we do this, this could totally work for both sides. And I wrote it down. I sent an email to myself at 3:00 in the morning. And when I woke up at 7, I, sent the email to the other agent and I was like, what if we tried this? Now, we actually got to a great place in the contract. We didn't end up going to contract because the people I was representing, when they had the extra night to sleep on it, they were like, this is a beautiful house, but it's not our dream house. And this is way too much money if it's not our dream house. And I was like, that, totally get it. We'll find another one. So we got to that place after a good night's sleep, but then they got to the place of really knowing what was right for them. And I think that's important all around as well.
Absolutely. All right. So you're mentioning your real estate business. So I want you to share with everybody on the call today what you're doing now and kind of how you use that extra time in COVID, because I love that. There's so many cool businesses and side hustles that came out of
right
quarantine.
One thing that is really cool about working with artists is you see that they're so multifaceted. I mean, Trisha is, an award-winning recording artist, but she also has a cooking show, and she's a cookbook author, and she has a pet collection, and she has a furniture collection. I mean, she does all of these things. I mean, Garth, has written best-selling books. He has, obviously, he's the biggest entertainer in the world. He has, major deals with partners like Amazon. I mean, he's on a tour. He's on the biggest stadium tour in the country right now. So they all are multifaceted. They're not doing only one thing. And I was very hung up for much of my career on I could only do one thing. I mean, my dad worked for the same company his entire life. And I just was that, still had this mentality that if I was going to do it well, I had to only do that. And I had all these other passions, but I always put them on the side. And, my husband and I would, we finished a pool and a pool house at our house. And then I was like, I need a new project. So then we built this house at the beach. And then I'm like, I need a new project. So we bought another lot and we're building another house. I mean, and he's like, you have got to, like, your projects cost a lot of money. And I'm like, I know, but they're so fun. So when the music industry slowed down during COVID and our tour ended and, we were still working, but my time, I mean, I traveled all the time. I could barely fit, meals with my family into my schedule prior to COVID. And when it shut down, Robert and I came down to the beach, and we were living at our house down here. And every day we would drive around at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and go look at real estate because we just love it. He's a developer. And I was like, I'm so tired of like going and looking at real estate and not being able to really find out what is out there and what is available. I'm just going to get my license. And he was like, okay. And so about 6 weeks later, I mean, you couldn't go to a class, you had to do everything online. I got my license, and I found the broker here that was exactly who I wanted to work with. I liked the brand. I liked, I knew it's Corcoran Reverie, and I knew the brand. I knew that the broker was really respectable and had just this wonderful reputation for integrity. She's just a powerhouse female who's been down here forever. So I went and had a meeting with her, and she was like, yeah, come work here. So I started that, but I mean, it was still new. I mean, yeah, I had my license, but I didn't know the ins and outs of this business. I knew the market really well, but I didn't know the ins and outs of the business. So I sat down and, really learned from people here and asked a lot of questions. And at the same time, my best friend's an interior designer. She did my house with me here. She had done some other houses, clients that I had introduced her to, and I would help her on the install just for fun because I love doing it. She and I had the best time doing my house. And so, we started talking about launching a business down here at the same time. And so we did. So we have an interior design firm based in the Panhandle called Colgan Simon. She is a brilliant designer. I am a great business person. What I discovered in doing things with her was that her superpower is creativity and space planning and construction integration. And she really understands interior design and coming in and working with an architect. I'm really good at keeping things on time, on schedule, the organization of, the business side of it. And so it was just a natural fit. So we launched that at the same time, and they are so cohesive, obviously, those two businesses, but also it's been just so fulfilling for me to be able to have, these side hustles that are really just other facets of my personality that I get to not only explore, but have turned into these chapters of my business career that are going to stay with me for the rest of my life. I mean, as much as I love the music business, I'm not going to be in the music business when I'm, 65 years old. But will I be doing this? Absolutely. And I just get so much passion and joy from doing it that it's been a great lesson. It's been very humbling to like know everything about your business and feel so confident in what you're doing, and then all of a sudden be like, I've got a whole new set of nuances that I have to learn.
Mhm. I love that because, a lot of times people ask me about it, like changing careers in my 40s, and like, why would you do that? You had to go back to, I guess just sort of like you studying for real estate license, you study for, kind of online for licenses within the financial industry as well. And kind of working through all those, it has been oddly life-giving, even though you
Right.
think like moving into like taking on something like that is just too much. Like my schedule's too busy. I mean, all the reasons why we can, as wives and mothers and working women, whatever it is, there's always a reason why, oh, I would never go back to school. I hear that constantly.
Right.
And I kind of feel like my new platform is like, actually, I think it might be just the thing you need, because it's there's like a little adrenaline rush too, like when you're working through something. And
Right.
yes, it's humbling, but like when you like reach a new milestone, when you
Ah,
accomplish something that you didn't think you would ever do, and
yeah.
you're like surprising yourself, it's just like, it's just something that I think a lot of times women in their middle ages like lack. And
Yeah.
but it's really fun. And I know, if you would think, just because this has been such a humbling experience for me, that it would like not do this, but like really it's helped me in my confidence. And now, like even going to the table to negotiate, whether or not it has anything to do with finance or law or whatever, I just
Mhm.
feel better about myself. Like, okay, well, I figured this out, so I'm sure I can figure this out.
Right,
It kind of like is a snowball effect, but
right.
and Lauren and I have touched on this before, but we were talking to this girl in New York who was starting this website that was having all these online courses, just they cover every topic. And
Mhm.
she was so awesome. And it's called Class Rebel. And one of the things that she said was that the new like wave of wellness is with education.
Yeah,
That because
great.
so many of us have stopped will stop any formal education at the age of 23, maybe
Mhm.
25,
Mhm.
and then we're living until we're 100. Like, why are we not
Why are
doing
why are
that?
we not continuing to learn?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so rewarding. I also think, just going back to something you said earlier about time, I had 6 months of my life in 2016 that I did not work. I had been at Sony for 13 years, and they restructured and with a new executive team, and I was restructured out when I was at the top of my game. The beauty of that was that I got a really nice payday, but I mean, I was such a busy person, that I was I didn't know what to do with myself. And my husband and I had been married for a year and a half, but I had a condo in Nashville, and I would spend my weekends in Birmingham with my husband and stepkids, and then I would go to Nashville on Monday and spend the week in Nashville and come back. So all of a sudden I was in this position that I got to go back to Birmingham and really focus on my new marriage and my stepkids. And so for 6 months, I think I organized every single room, closet, drawer. I'm totally OCD. So everything in the house was like perfectly put together. And my husband said to me one day, he's like, I don't care if you never make another dollar in your life, but you have got to get out of the house. I mean, you are not a Mountain Brook you're not a Mountain Brook housewife. That is not your path in life. And
Mhm.
I was, of course, I was a little upset, but I mean, I also was like, I'm so antsy. I look back, and the one thing that I wish I had done in that time window, instead of, I mean, it was great to organize my house and get you know, um, my new home, redecorated and all of those things. But what I didn't take the time to do was educate myself in a new area. And there were things I wanted to do, but at that moment, I just didn't have I was nervous. I mean, honestly, I was insecure about it.
Mhm.
And I started, taking meetings again in Nashville, and of course people called me. And so all of that, really came together, and I learned, and what I've learned since then, I mean, that was 5 years ago, is at that time, I thought I was so busy with all of the things I had to do at home. And I was also, taking kids and picking up kids from school and activities and all of that. But now that I am as busy as I am now, which is the busiest I've probably ever been in my life, I'm so much more productive. And I'm more productive because I don't waste time. And that doesn't mean that I don't relax and I don't take vacations and I don't take time for my husband and my family. But I really have learned how to compartmentalize my time and schedule my day to where everything is getting my clear and focused attention when my attention is on it. Um, and that's something I wish I had known in that, at that window of time that I know now. I mean, I felt like I couldn't do this and that and the other. Well, now I'm doing all of that. And you know, I'm dealing with two houses, and I'm dealing with, I'm still a wife, and I'm still a stepmom. And, I have things with kids I have to do. I have obviously, extended family and friends and social life and all of those things, but I'm able to balance it better because I really pay attention to the scheduling of my time and my attention. And I also have learned how to say no to things that aren't serving. I'm the president of the HOA board in my community down here, and I was also on the design review board. And the other day I was like, God, the design review board is not serving me anymore. I have done everything I could do for this community, and there are other people who want to be on the board. It's time for me to transition and put somebody else on the board for this community. And I step away from that because my time, my passions lie somewhere else. I'm going to set it up wonderfully for them. I'm going to get her integrated and have her, really ready to go. I won't step away too early. But learning when to say no and how to create your own boundaries, I think really helps you expand your capabilities, and it helps you to stay passionate and empowered and not be frustrated when things do get hectic and crazy.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I love that too, because it also gives others the opportunities to take, like, if, with your mentorship, as you help this girl become ready to then take on that role, you're just pouring into her just as other people have poured into you. And I think that's such an important component, because oftentimes, yes, we are saying no to something, and perhaps in our minds, we feel like we're letting somebody down by stepping away, but really it's just a shift in mindset of, I'm not going to just step away and leave them high and dry. But if I also take the time to give to somebody who could be built up by this experience, it just changes everything. I love that.
You and I talked about it yesterday. I mean, it's just like when you get a promotion. I mean, when you step into the next phase in a career, it doesn't mean that you're giving up or you're letting somebody down in the job that you're in. You're helping someone else grow into that job and take their next steps. It's kind of just the normal cycle. And so I try to look at the different things I'm doing, whether it's the HOA board or the design review board or my design business or my real estate business. I mean, everything has a cycle. I mean, whether it's a specific project that has a cycle, or if it is, a specific deal that has a cycle, there is a beginning, a middle, and an end. And so it's always, how are you moving through it? And how do you leave your mark that is, how do you make it better? How do you personally make that life cycle of whatever that thing is better than when you found it or when you got there?
Mm-hmm. I love that. All right, Leslie, we could talk to you for another hour. I feel certain of it. But as we kind of come to the close of our 30 minutes, I do want to ask you the question that we ask all our guests as to why you said yes to the Wealth Edit. Why do you think it's important for women to talk about money and wealth?
Well, first and foremost, I mean, I grew up in Montgomery, Alabama, and there were a lot of people I knew, and I mean, even me at a young age, that they were looking at going to college and meeting a husband and getting married and having somebody take care of them. And I learned really young that I didn't want to just be taken care of. I wanted to be responsible. I wanted to be able to go out and buy those Christian Louboutin shoes if I wanted to and not ask permission. I mean, and I love feeling complete and total independence and knowing that no matter what happens, I'm going to be okay. I can fend for myself. I can make money for myself. But I also think there's an important balance and a partnership that comes with the contribution that I make to our family. I'm very proud of that. I mean, I'm very proud of when my husband and I do this new house. I'm like, the interiors are mine. I'm paying for all of the interiors, and I will, if I want to go and buy a ridiculously priced chandelier for my entry, I'm going to do that. I like having that independence and that power and that control. And I also think that it's important for the balance of our partnership, but it's important to know what is going on in your financial world. It's important to, and whether, I mean, when I was young, I didn't save a dollar. I was terrible at it. And then when I, started to make money, and really much later than should have. I mean, I waited until my 40s to really start to invest and save. But the freedom that it gives you to do, I mean, and you can start little. I mean, I think the first check I gave to my uncle, who's my who handles all of my brokerage stuff, I mean, I gave him like $5,000, and I was like, okay, take this. I mean, it was just, whatever little bit you can start with, the amount of independence and freedom that it gives you as you progress in life is is really fun, and also being able to go out and do things. And I mean, I always believed in saving and planning for a vacation and celebrations to do things for yourself. And so when you have the freedom, and if that celebration is, a bottle of Dom, or it is a piece of jewelry, or it's a trip to Paris, it doesn't matter. It's acknowledging it, no matter how little or how much or how little you spend. I mean, a massage and a mani-pedi can be a big celebration for something that you've done. And I think that's important. And being able to take care of those things yourself, I think, are really, really important.
Well, thank you. And I know Lauren and I both, it's hard to celebrate our wins as women. For some reason, it's just to acknowledge
It's really important.
and I'm so excited about it. So I love that advice. Well, thank you, Leslie, so much.
You're
Thank
so
you for
welcome.
being here. And hopefully we can have you back again, because I feel like we could continue to dive more into the negotiating. And maybe just as a last word, can you tell us maybe one fun thing about Garth and Trisha? Because as much as we like to talk about money, we still are all, or at least I am, enamored with celebrities for some reason, and Garth is like my favorite of all time.
Well, they are truly the kindest people I know. They are two of my dearest friends and favorite people in the world. And I guess what I would tell you is, backstage and behind the scenes, he is just as sweet and kind and as real as you see in his Facebook Live series or in an interview. I mean, that's who he is. And so know that when you see that, the people that are in his circle and know him love him even more than the fans do.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Well, thank you. Enjoy
Thank
your
y'all. Appreciate you
rest of
having
your
me.
day. All right. Have a
Have a
great
great
day.
day.
Thanks, guys.